Today, I just wanted to just reflect back about a few things from last year, something that was quite inspiring for me in my life that I have been doing for about 18 months now is that I've been teaching in Western Sydney University Parramatta campus once a month, every last Sunday, most of the time. Some Sundays were slightly different. But and that teaching was offered for the entire family. So both for the parents and the kids, we have concurrent sessions where I was teaching the parents and one of the other nuns together with some of our very beautiful volunteers were teaching the kids. It was just a trial. So we started slowly and see whether it will keep going. And it continued on. So the first 6 months was in 2024. And when we saw that it was going and people were coming and the numbers were increasing, since last year I started to methodically teach the Dhamma, because also this was for people who are new to Buddhism and also for anybody who's already familiar. It's always nice to remember, reflect, recap with the things we already know. So the classes started, first of all, finding a true refuge. So anyway, the people who are attending also said there's quite a lot of Dhamma content in these classes, and can we have something printed, something that you can refer back to so that they can try and, reflect again and remember. So I said I will try my best. So in December, I think I did a small little booklet called Finding True Refuge, and I did share it with people on the WhatsApp group and on our website. And now I have done the second class, which was about efficient methods of learning the teaching. Yeah, how to really, if you want to benefit from this Dhamma, it is also important how to learn these teachings in an effective way. And in the third class, I think we spoke about taking precepts and the power of precepts, or the importance of taking precepts. And then on the fourth class, we spoke about the importance of harmony. And also a little bit of general guidance of how meditation works, the meditation psychology. And then it was Vesak, so that we spoke about the life of the Buddha. In fact, it was just more of a Vesak event at Santi and learning the Buddha's life. But after that, we went on to the Buddha's noble search. How did we end up getting a Buddha in the world? Why did somebody who was born to a rich family and with all the luxury and comforts and happy and contented good life still wanted to find a way away from suffering? And then we went into what did he discover at the time of his enlightenment? And his discovery was the dependent origination. So very quickly, we delved even into, by week 6 or 7, I think 7, we even month 7, seventh session, delved into dependent origination, but in a very practical way. So we did forward sequence, backward sequence, practical ways of understanding it. And then everybody was curious to see about delusion and understand more about, ignorance and where it comes from, because they realize, okay, that's the problem. Ignorance is the problem. So how do we deal with it? So we spoke about a few more suttas based on, Avijja Sutta, how even ignorance is conditioned. And then, of course, I went away to WA. So I think Venerable Pek, I did a session entirely on the Mara, Mara's armies, which goes together nicely with delusion. And then we had a recap. The last month was about fun and games, but it was like more quiz just to see how much people remembered. And it was the last session of the year. So now people are still waiting to really find out how to overcome delusion. So hopefully this year we will start from maybe a little bit of gradual training and other skillful methods. This is just mainly I'm also reflecting and remembering for my own joy in the heart of services that I have done, but also for anybody who is listening, who is in Sydney or Parramatta area, so that you would also get to know about these. We'll put more information on our website, but it is a good opportunity to interact. It's a live teaching, not like a Zoom, so you can attend in person. And having kids wouldn't stop you from attending these classes, and kids also get to learn. So anyway, what I have in mind for today is because I've been working on this second booklet, which is about efficient way of learning the teachings. So I thought that it might be nice to just go through that for a little bit. So in this book, I think in this session, we spoke a couple of different things. One was about how to find a good teacher and the efficient way of learning, but also how to teach our kids, because this is also important, right? So how do kids learn Dhamma? How to teach our children? This is an important aspect as well. I'm not sure whether today's session is enough for covering all of that, because these sessions are over 2 hours or something. But let's see. So I was just starting with finding a good teacher. But before then, that actually I was recapping from the previous month, which was about finding a true refuge. So why do all of us, all the people in the Zoom, I see you again and again coming to the Zoom talks. Yeah, and it's not only for these Zooms, I see you all in many other Dhamma activities. Yeah, we all keep going back again and again into Dhamma, listening, learning, and practicing the Buddha's teachings. Why do we do this? What motivates us? So I think the answer is that we have realized the value of these teachings, these wisdom teachings, how they have been so very helpful to us, how they have benefited us, and how we could find a true refuge at times of difficulty. A refuge is a place that we go to for some release, for protection, yeah, so from getting out of the trouble. So that we have come around to understand the limitations of money, education, insurances, even medicine, affluent connections. All of these things we have come to understand the limitations. These are the things that ordinary people look for refuge in, and we too as well. But we have realized a better refuge in these teachings. That's why we keep coming back to these teachings again and again. However, we are also at a time that is a little bit dangerous. And that is, there's a lot of teaching available, unlike when I was young. Some of the Dhamma was not that readily available, even though I come from a Buddhist country, traditional Buddhist country. Still, it was not easy to hear the actual word of the Buddha. What we commonly heard were commentaries or sub-commentaries or sub-commentaries from various monastics. But going back to the early Buddhist teachings, the actual suttas, actual teachings of the Buddha, was not that common. But now times are different, times have changed. And a lot of the teachings or a lot of the suttas are freely available both to listen, to read, and this is a blessing. But at the same time, there are quite a lot of corrupted teachings, and unfortunately, corrupted teachers are also around. So you also get to hear what is not the word of the Buddha in place of the word of the Buddha. Very nicely articulated. And even they say, and they try to interpret that back into the Pali by changing the meaning or the understanding or showing it in a different way. However, this is where we have to be very careful. The Dhamma taught by the Buddha was given in a very beautiful way. Yeah? Adi Kalyanam, Madhya Kalyanam, Pariyosana Kalyanam. Good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Saatta, Sabhyanjana, Kevala Paripunna. So they're full of meaning, correct meaning, and right phrasing. So that it's not superfluous. The words are organized beautifully. Every word had a powerful and clear meaning. And even the phrase was phrased in a way there is no misunderstanding possible, was clear, right? It's not like a pun or very misleading or anything like that, the actual word of the Buddha. So it was clear, beautiful teachings. It's kind of sad to see that they get corrupted in the modern times. And even through monastics, sometimes you might get to hear these things. So that is therefore very important how to find the good teachings and a reliable teacher. And Buddha also foresee that this will happen. This is the nature of all things, right? All things over a period of time change and is bound to get corrupted. So the Buddha says when that happens, there are clear ways of finding out whether something is the teaching of the Buddha. So, and then also he said that there will also be teachers coming up who will probably misrepresent the teachings. And this is no small matter. One of the worst kind of karma that you can do is to distort the teachings of the Buddha. So really important that we know how to figure out who is telling the actual teachings and who is not. And who is a reliable teacher? Who should we follow? And of course, we should be following the Buddha and his teachings. And each one of us also find it helpful to have a contemporary teacher who's around as a guide, just simply as a guide, who would point back into the teachings of the Buddha, not to their own philosophy, not to their own kind of way of things, but the Buddha's teachings itself. And so it's not only about articulating the teachings. Many people can articulate the Dhamma quite well. But a good teacher, a reliable teacher, also needs to be somebody who also practice these teachings, who have some of these important qualities. And the Buddha gave this in the suttas. Yeah, how to find a reliable teacher. And I'm not going to get into a long discussion about this, but I would tell you which sutta you can look up. And that is in Middle Length Discourses, Majjhima Nikaya 95, called Chanki Sutta. So in this Chanki Sutta, it's quite a long beginning. There's a big story and kind of stuff. But towards the end, the Buddha talks about how do we find a good teacher, and then how do we learn these teachings? Right? So this is really, really important. Okay, so first of all, how do we find what's the teaching of the Buddha? So one of the methods that the Buddha himself mentioned is there are some qualities to the Dhamma. So, and this comes up in numerical discourses, chapter 8, sutta number 53, called Gotami Sutta. There is also another sutta called Upali Sutta as well. And in this Gotami Sutta, the Buddha says, Gotami, those qualities of which you would know, these qualities lead to dispassion, not to passion, to being unfettered, not fettered, to getting rid of, not heaping up, to few wishes, not many wishes, to contentment, not discontentment, to seclusion, not socializing, to arousal of energy, not laziness, to being easy to support, not hard to support. You may definitely hold, this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teaching of the Buddha. So really important, really important 8 qualities. So whenever you hear Buddha's teachings, and when you understand and when you apply it into your life, see how the effect of those teachings in your mind. As a result of this hearing the teachings is if passion comes up, passion for sensuality, that is, not passion for the practice, but passion for sensuality, desire comes up, then you know we have to be careful, suspicious, and do more investigation. If you get tied up, more attachments come about as a result, right? And if you have, wanting many things, you start accumulating things. The teaching suggests somehow you to get more things. If you have many, your wishes increase, your desires, your wants, your cravings increases. And it leads to discontentment. And you end up socializing more instead of heading towards seclusion. You're encouraged to be with more and more people instead of being in seclusion. And you realize you're getting more lazy, more slothful, and also you become, difficult to support, not easy to support. So it's important. So I think you need to read this sutta again and try and memorize even these 8 things, just to know how, one way of finding out whether these are the teachings of the Buddha. And also, another way the Buddha says is also when you hear some teachings, because Buddha's teachings are not a huge variety, even though they say there were 84,000 discourses. A large part of these are all repeated. There's a core group of teachings, and there's only a few. The Buddha says even what he taught was about suffering and ending of suffering, only what is important to achieve this goal of ending suffering. And he said, his knowledge is about the amount of leaves that is in the forest. But what he taught us is only just a handful of leaves that he picked up in his hands and said, that's all I taught you. So it's not a lot, but they're repeated again and again. So it is easy again, because if you know a wide variety of teachings already, like good quality teachings, then when you hear another teaching, if something stands out like a sore thumb that you never heard before, then again you can be a bit careful. And you can also try and apply that. And does it flow together? This is a very beautiful thing about Buddha's teachings, is they're all part of one, let's say like a jigsaw puzzle or something. So they fit nicely together. Yeah, so you know how it fits and where it fits when you get familiar with these teachings. You understand how whichever teaching, whichever discourse you listen to, how it fits in with the entire path and how it leads you to ending of suffering. Yeah, so then you can see how this thing fit. But if it is not the teaching of the Buddha, or if it is a teaching that is corrupted, then you can see that it doesn't fit quite well. And you will understand that it is. So these are also ways, but also now how to begin at the very beginning to get good quality teachings. Well, modern technology also has helped us. Yeah. So people like Bante Sujato, Ajahn Brahmali, and Bante Bikuanalo have done some very fantastic work, and they do these text critical studies. Yeah, you can compare. So there is a meter to a language. And each language, over years, over centuries, the meter of the language changes. So this is how we know, like, the time, if anything, in any literature from the time of Shakespeare, the English is different. There's a clear difference from that time to modern way of English. Even modern English has probably evolved in the last decade or two. New words added in, sentence structures change. Yeah. So you can see from the meter of a language whether it's old or new, like later additions. And then also um, you can do comparative studies, because the Buddha's teachings were preserved maybe a couple of 100 years after the Buddha's passing away in Sri Lanka, in Pali, and in China, in Chinese. And they stayed quite separated geographically, culturally, and distance-wise. Yet now, if you translate this and compare the teachings, then you can see whatever is common in both, you can be quite sure is also early teachings. Anything that is different, not to discard, it could be just teachings were lost in one school, or it could be newly added. So this is where then you have to do more investigation. But they have found out, the people who did, these are the three Bhantes I mentioned, that at least about 90% of the teachings found in Chinese Agamas and the Pali Nikayas are about same, almost the same, 90%. So you find out some of that 90%, which is a lot of teachings, and if you read them from a reliable translator, like, you can find from Bhikkhu Bodhi the books, and some of the Bhikkhu Bodhi's teachings are also available, translations are also available in Sutta Central or Bhante Sujato's translations, quite reliable, correct meanings. They're all Pali scholars, Buddhist scholars for a long time with a good reputation and a recognition throughout the world. So then once you understand some of the core teachings and the stuff, then you can be a bit more ready to listen a bit widely and not get pulled in the wrong direction. This is so important because, you only need a small shift. But when you continue that shift, when you go further, the distance from truth, it goes further away from truth. Yeah. Only in the beginning, it sounds and seems like a small little shift, like when a plane is taking off and you have only slight angle difference. Yeah. Very slight angle difference at the airport. But if you don't correct it and maintain that over a long distance, you will end up in a very far away place. Like if you took off from Washington in America and wanted to go to LA, but you will end up in Seattle. Something like that, yeah, in the opposite ends of a big, wide continent. I just use that continent because it's really wide to explain how far apart you could end up with a slight angle difference. Same is true with the Dhamma. It could be a slight change in the right view, then it is no longer right view, it will be wrong view. And then if you follow that along without correcting it for a long period of time, or continue to apply it, it'll take you away and away, further away from the true Dhamma, these beautiful teachings, which were beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the end, and well phrased with meaning and words and, powerful teachings, will be lost. So it's really no small matter to find good teachings. And then, of course, a good teacher is then somebody who will be telling the true teaching. So at least the early Buddhist text, who would give references and would say if they're saying something of their own, and they will make a clear distinction at that, and also mention if that was the word of the Buddha and where to find it as much as possible, and guiding you in the right way. But not only that, the Buddha also says some other things that are also important in a teacher. So it is important that the teacher is saying the Buddha's teachings, is representing and teaching and guiding you on the Buddha's teachings, not something else. But also the teacher is that somebody who's also practicing this to see what's okay. Okay, I can't find who was making noise. Anyway, so I lost my throat. Just give me a second. Yeah, so the other things that the Buddha mentioned about finding a good teacher is to see, and comes up in the Chanki Sutta, that you look whether the teacher still has a lot of greed, hatred, and delusion. Yeah, the three unwholesome roots. Of course, they will be present in anybody who is unenlightened. And it is extremely hard to find enlightened teachers. They are there in the world, but very far and, few and far apart. And we have to be very, very lucky to meet somebody and have more opportunities to learn from a fully enlightened, a really truly enlightened. There are many people who declare they're enlightened. We have to be very careful of these people, because usually, according to the Buddha's advice, anybody who's enlightened would not declare. So this is also why it is really hard to find who is enlightened or not. So therefore, then what you have to do is you have to go and meet them again and again. Spend some time, because it's one thing to just listen on Zoom or at a retreat or at a Dhamma talk where they are on there, just giving a talk. But rather, you sometimes have to go and live with these teachers in their monastery and see them in their day-to-day, doing their day-to-day business and dealings. And then you get to really understand. And then see, if you see really strong desires, because anybody who's unenlightened will have some degree of desire, and that is okay. But strong, unwholesome, unmonastic like desires, if you start to see them, that's a clear sign to be careful, not to follow. These are the teachers that could be very charismatic, very articulating, but you end up getting abused later. We hear stories in the world, even sexual abuse is there sometimes, so which is unfortunate. So you have to be very careful. So see whether they overcome by strong desires, not the really small, ordinary ones, but also anger, like strong anger, ill will, negativity, again, abuse coming from anger, right? Some in like cults and things, it's like this, I hear. And delusion is hard to see, but that is ego, If they have a lot of ego, that is a clear sign of delusion as well. So not to be very critical, then you will end up with nobody to guide you. Very, very hard. So not to be so critical and fault finding and judging, in every little thing, but in a general way. Have some common sense, way of sensing somebody who is trying their very best to, work with these things. And also they live what they preach. And they preach what they live and practice. So these are a few of the ways to find a good teacher, because very easily somebody who is a good friend, a Kalyana Mitta, can turn into a Papa Mitta and head you in the wrong direction. And this is happening in the world. This is unfortunate news. So we have to be very careful. Otherwise, even though the Buddha's teachings offer a very beautiful refuge, it will no longer be a refuge, because if it is not the true teachings of the Buddha, and also you get entangled with the wrong kind of teacher, then heading for a lot of trouble. So we have to be very careful with this one. So this is about just finding true teachings. And then how do we actually learn? And this is really, really important. So at the start of any discourse, the Buddha says, Tansunata sadhukam manasikarota. So the Buddha says, please listen, pay attention, give your ear, right? And pay full attention, I shall speak. So the Buddha is encouraging people to give attention. Yeah. So even though Buddha never directly say, don't teach to anybody who is distracted, but just say, encouraging people to say, please give attention, I shall speak, means, distraction is discouraged. So this, if you can then understand, you can see, if a Dhamma sermon is being delivered, so it's not appropriate to start talking with each other. It's not the time to have a Dhamma discussion about what you're just hearing. Yeah, you do it later. Or to be distracted with your mobile phones these days. So you can think about, how your mind, or start thinking about other things, fantasizing, or, so many ways that we can be distracted. But then we will lose something that is so valuable, right? If you're distracted, nothing goes in. And a beautiful sutta, which the reference is not with me right now, but it'll come up when the little booklet comes up. In the Buddha says there are three kinds of, I think it was called inverted wisdom, the name of the sutta, in Anguttara 3 somewhere. And there are three different types of people, how they listen to the Dhamma. Some people listen to the Dhamma like a inverted pot. That means, if the pot is turned upside down and you pour some water, the water just pours out, right? Nothing stays. It just pours out. So this is how some people listen to a sermon. They are just there, nothing goes in. It just pours out. Yeah. They are just there, but nothing goes in. And there's another kind of people, they listen. At the time, they are listening. Yeah, they're listening. But when they get up and go, all the teachings are gone. Just like if you had something on your lap, like some food that you had in your lap, and if you just got up without anything, all that will spill all over the floor. And you just walk out empty-handed. So these are the kind of people who'd say, oh, that was a really nice, good talk. And if you ask them, so what was it about? Can't remember. Yeah. After a little while, you don't remember. So you haven't retained what you have heard. So they are like this, like lap. So it's like food on the lap. That was the Buddha's simile. Yeah. You get up and it spills over. And the third kind of person is like a empty vessel. Yeah. In the right way up. And you pour water, then it all remains. Yeah? Because if it is an empty vessel, it can hold water or whatever you pour in. So the Buddha says, listening to the Dhamma, listen like that, like you are an empty vessel, so that it can be poured over, it's retained and kept. And the other thing is, if the vessel was even right way up, but it was full of water, it's just like the inverted vessel, right? It's still water spills because you're full of your own ideas. And these kind of people also sometimes when they listen just to criticize the teacher, to find fault with the teaching. Yeah. So these kinds of way to put down the teacher or to put down themselves. There's all kinds of ways that you listen, not with a good heart, not with a pure heart, in a way that somehow to destroy yourself and others. This is common, yeah. Some people just want to argue. That's all they want to listen to Dhamma is purely to argue and win. Doesn't matter whether it's the teaching of the Buddha, whether it's going in the right direction. All they want is, just to have an argument or criticism, things like this. So there are many ways where even if you hear the Dhamma, you will not benefit from it. Yeah, instead, you need to listen to Dhamma with attentiveness, with respect, yeah, with care, with like an empty cup, not with the view of arguing, not with the view of criticizing. This doesn't mean that you can't ask questions and argue in the sense if it is necessary, in the sense, if you want to make a point clear and understand deeper, that is okay. And questioning is definitely helpful and encouraged as well by the Buddha. But that's different to criticizing and arguing in a very vicious kind of way. So there are many more which I can't remember off the top of my head, but these are few of the things that the Buddha says that are important. So listening is really important because that is the starting point. So sutta, yeah, this is called listening. So listen, because at the time of the Buddha, especially written material was very rare. So most of the teachings were just retained in memory, right? So listening is therefore important, and how you listen is important. And this is also equally still important for our modern life, even for children or anybody who needs to study for something. It's really important, yeah, if you are able to sort of empty your mind, make it peaceful, fully be there and attentive and listen with care, then you actually will retain and remember, and less work when you have to go for the exam. Yeah, because you already do your work preparation at the time of the lecture, yeah, as you're listening. So, and again, like just the example is if you have spent a lot of money to go for a course to maybe, how to invest your money so that you earn a lot more, something like this, and you usually these kind of courses are quite expensive, so you spend a quite big amount of money, and then how do you listen? You will be listening with full attention, right? Because it is important and you spend a good money. So then you want to get your money's worth, so you listen very strongly. So Buddha's teachings is much more valuable than any course that you can pay for, right? The Buddha's teachings are freely available. However, you have to be again careful. Some people sell these, yeah. You have to spend big money to go for some of these courses. Then, you have to be careful. These are freely available. So Buddha gave his teachings freely available, but because they're free doesn't mean they're not valuable. In fact, they are valuable. So therefore, you have to give equal, or if not, more attention, yeah, in listening to them. So how you attend is important. So sutta is listening, and how you listen is important. First factor of how effective learning. The second factor is you retain what you learn. So when you have a determination to remember it, because it is important, not taking notes, not just recording anything, you are retaining in your mind. That is the most powerful. Because even if you write it in a book and record it, then when you need it, you can't bring it up very quickly. But if it is in your mind, you can bring it up and apply and put it into use straight away. So retaining. So this is done through giving full attention and having that determination to retain it. But retaining is only for a short time. It doesn't necessarily stay fully. So after the talk, what you retain, then you verbally memorize it. You practice it again and again. So verbal rehearsing. Yeah, Vachasa Parichita, this is called. So we keep saying it again and again and again and again, memorization. Yeah, so you memorize that. So then it goes into your long-term memory and stays with you for life. So this is the third step. So first step is to listen attentively, carefully, in a powerful way, like an empty cup. Second one is retaining what you have heard, which requires a bit of determination and giving full attention. And the third step is to memorize. And the fourth step is then whatever you have in memory now, you mentally inspect it. So you can recall, right? Recall the teachings. And then you try to put the teachings together. Because as I mentioned earlier, all these teachings fit together nicely to make up the whole path. Yeah, whichever teaching you hear in isolation is not isolated. Yeah, it is always part of the entire path. So when you reflect, then you understand how it works, how it makes sense, how it applies to your life, how you can benefit from them. So you start to understand it deeply, and suddenly you say, I see. Now I understand. This makes sense. So this happens only when we do this mental investigation. Manasanu pekita. Yeah, that's the Pali word. So when you do that, then right view get established. Ditya Supatividya. That teachings become established as right view. This is also a very important thing because the whole path is about growing in right view, right? It is the right view is the cooling agent of all the fires, yeah, all the defilements. We are burning, yeah. So we are burning with our fires, anger, hatred, delusion, ill will, negativity, jealousy, all kinds of so many kinds of fires that we are burning constantly. The cooling agent is right view, wisdom. Yeah. So this is how the wisdom starts. The first seed is coming from the Buddha. So Buddha's teachings plants the seed for right view, and we get this seed by listening to the Dhamma and retaining it, memorizing it, and then mentally inspecting it, and then it gets established as a seed of right view. And then you, of course, apply it again and again. Bhavana bahulikata means you apply and practice again and again this teaching, and you start to see it through your own practice, through your own body and mind. Then it is getting more and more right view, gets more and more established. And eventually you become right view, that is an arahant. Yeah, an arahant, a fully enlightened being, has become right view, completely cooled. Sitibhuto, they are called. Yeah, completely cooled of all the defilements. So these five, this is a very effective, very efficient, really powerful way of learning. So the most important place to use this is for the learning of the Dhamma, but it works equally well for any other way for your worldly life too. If you want to pass exams, do well with your studies, again, this way of, attentive listening, retaining, memorizing, mentally inspecting, and then things become a view you understand. So this is where I will stop this talk, and maybe we'll talk about how to teach children or other topics in the upcoming talks. And I would like to open up for any questions, any comments, any suggestions that you would like to add or ask. You're welcome. Okay, if no questions, then I actually can go into a little bit of how to, it's not a lot to say, about the powerful way of teaching the kids, yeah? And the most powerful way of teaching anybody, not just kids, is not just with words, but your lived example, yeah? So, because kids watch you more than they listen to you. So don't tell them to do things that you do yourself, right? You have to, so it's not easy to be a parent. It's not that easy at all. Yeah. You have to get your own act together. It's not easy to be a Dharma teacher either. We have to try and get our own act together as much as possible. But that is also not to put too much pressure and be so afraid of making mistakes. That doesn't work either. But the idea is if you make a mistake, just acknowledge that and say, yeah, that was wrong, what I said or did. Forgive me, and I'm sorry. And that is really important. Otherwise, it is not good. So kids learn from example. So this is the main thing. Like instead of telling them not to do or what to do, you practice and preach how you want them to do. This is really, really powerful because the kids these days have a lot of the things, they have material comfort, enough food to eat, they can go to good schools. All of these things are okay. But, is that what they really need? That's the other thing, yeah, what they need and how they learn. How do they learn to become kind? How do they learn to become honest? Yeah, how do they learn to become generous? How do they learn to have gratitude? Yeah, these are not things that you can just say by words. You can read book, write books, give big sermons about these things, but powerful way of they listen. They learn these things way before you start even talking about them. They already see that in you. So if you have gratitude, they learn gratitude. If you are kind, they learn what is kindness. If you're very affectionate, they learn affection from you. And if you're respectful, they learn respect from you. Now, this is a really important, big subject. Yeah, respect. How to respect. What did the Buddha say about respect? There's quite a lot that can be said, but I think I will save that for another time because it's certainly a truly a topic that deserves its own whole 1 hour or something. But even, respect is by respecting. So respect is not because I'm older, you need to respect me, or because I'm the parent, you need to respect it. Respect is mutual. And how do you respect, right? Simple ways of how does a kid understand or anybody understand if they are being respected, yeah? Is by when somebody's talking to you, you stop what you're doing and give attention, look at them. And if you can't, if you're busy, you tell them, please, this is not the time, I'm busy, give me some time. And then you keep to your promise, yeah? So, and including people, yeah? Including even kids. And inclusion is a way of showing respect. Because when you include them now in whatever decisions you're doing, even though they may not be, old enough or know enough of life to give a very good decision, you can still hear what they have to say. And I have heard some kids, they think out of the box, and some kids are quite smart and intelligent, and they can come up with really good ideas which you never thought of. I have heard some parents still say that this is my son's idea, this was my daughter's great idea, and I feel really happy when I hear this, that some parents actually include their children in, doing decisions. And then, our roles reverse. Yeah, now we are the strong parent. But as we age, we become like the child and they become like our parent. Yeah, and they are looking after us and they are making decisions. And at that time, you would want to be included, isn't it? So if you want to be included when they are making decisions about you or, around you, then you need to do the same. You teach them when they were young already by including them as well. So these are really very important things to remember and not to really lie to kids. This is how they learn how to be dishonest later. So if you want your kids to be honest, we need to be honest ourselves, not to even lie to just in a simple way, just to, distract them in a different way, yeah, instead of lying. So, so this is really something that we need to contemplate, yeah, how we become example, how we teach kids by example. And whenever I ask kids, when they're here, sometimes parents ask even recently, uh, can you please tell them not to play too much games and not to use too much of the phone? Then it actually backfired on the parents, because I asked the parents, oh, what about you? How much phone do you use? Do you play also games, video games? And the parents went silent. Yeah, I said, if you're doing that, how can you tell your kids not to do? And the very reason why the kids do it is because of this. I ask then and there. I always do this when parents ask this. I ask because parents and kids are in front of me. This is after lunch Dhamma sermons at the monastery. So I asked the kids, if you were to get, 1 hour or 1 or 2 hours of quality time with your parents, a lot of love, affection, beautiful family time together, or you get to, have the phone and do whatever you like with the phone and play games or whatever, which would you prefer? And every single kid, it's very rare somebody said otherwise. Each one of them would say family, yeah, spending time with parents, feeling that belonging to the family. That is what they want, affection, yeah, being in the family and your time. And the reason why kids pick up the phones or the games and all of these things is also because they feel hurt, a bit ignored, because they want the parents. The parents are busy, and often the parents are busy doing the exact thing they don't want kids to do. So, if you want your kids not to do these things, then you also have to give them time, quality time, spend time with them, and also not do these things yourself. So we have to be really careful. Yeah, parenting is no small thing. But this is how even the Dhamma. So very often they come to the monastery and say, please teach some Dhamma to our kids. I mean, I can tell, but those words, they may remember a little bit, they may not. But they really learn the Dhamma at home from you. So if you want to teach your kids Dhamma, learn the Dhamma, yeah, listen to the Dhamma, retain the Dhamma, memorize the Dhamma, mentally inspect, and practice and apply and live the Dhamma. Yeah, that is the best way that your kids will learn and benefit from the Dhamma. And sometimes some people ask, how do I teach my really young, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 year old little child or grandchild some Dhamma? They're the easiest actually, but not with words. When they think about teaching, they think about, somehow externally articulating it or making it to a game or somehow. But this is not how it is, yeah? If you don't want them to get stressed, try and see whether you can stay stress-free as much as possible in their presence. If you're stressed, if you have a lot of anxiety, fear, sadness, anger, they sense it and they get stressed, they get worried, they get anxious. And they cry, they're suffering like anything. They don't understand because they're so young also, right? This is 1, 2 or 3 year olds. You can't explain what's going on, why mommy or daddy is having a strong negative emotion. They don't understand. So, really important how you are in front of your kids, and this is how they learn these things. So it's no easy matter. So it's a lot of preparation on our side. So self-care, which comes up in every talk, is because of that.